Are Electronic Arts cocking up some of their most important games and not really taking care of the players? I think a lot of people would say yes to that. And then we've got to ask ourselves why. I mean, why do you end up in a situation where you manage to somehow right the wrongs of Battlefront 2, have a game that is really well received by people, and then just kind of stop dead?
It's very interesting, but as we're going to go through, it's been an actual trend for, almost a decade now, I think, with EA. They just will not support their games.
Yeah, and the reasons why we think are pretty damn interesting. So let's just get right into it, Matt. Okay, EA let their games die. Is 2042 going the same way? I think one of the things that's happened with Battlefield is shaken faith in the franchise.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, shaken faith. So, why? Well, Battlefield 1 and 5 have been lastingly mistreated a little bit. Pattern of mismanagement, poor communication, a sort of too big to fail feeling thing going on. To very quickly catch up in those, Battlefield 1 sold incredibly well. Its DLC sold well, and with its DLCs, well, they did split the player base, of course. But seriously, man, I enjoyed those maps so much. There's so much content in that game, and while it did not have the depth of other Battlefield games that I really liked, I enjoyed it for what it was. Battlefield 5 then came in, and it actually gave me a lot of the depth that I wanted in its combat model. Now, there is a few things that weren't perfectly polished or anything like that, but the gunplay was some of the best in Battlefield. They actually had recoil patterns for guns. They did all these things to make it a bit more hardcore. The time to kill went down a little bit. And I was really happy with all of that.
Yeah.
Then, of course, cue the entire time to kill drama, the whole situation of the monetization of that game, the lack of maps, the delayed maps, the late maps, it seemingly feeling like they didn't really complete their plan with the game, the mismarketed, the whole mismarketing of it where, I actually booted this game up on an Xbox yesterday, and it is entirely, hyper serious. This is the cost of war. This is what's going on. This is the human struggle. This is the best and worst of humanity as brought forth via combat. Now, you've not seen that scene because you've not played the game.
Yeah.
But does that seem congruent with the big bombastic trailer that everyone clowned on them for?
No, not
yes,
at all.
Exactly.
Yeah, I always felt like, from an outsider's perspective, I always felt Battlefield was kind of like, oh yeah, this is for the people who are, who treat their gameplay seriously, and it's a little bit more sim-esque, but still very fun. It's not encroaching on Arma's level of seriousness.
Oh, not at all.
But it's like, hey, it's a little bit simmy in feel, but it's also really interesting gameplay-wise. Has really wild, almost like sandboxy feel, and I've never heard anyone talk about it in the same way. They're like, oh, it's really, really serious. I've never heard that.
So with Battlefield, when it is its best, it is a authentic combined arms sandbox. It's not realistic. No one has ever claimed that Battlefield is realistic. What Battlefields generally want, though, is they want it to take itself decently seriously, because that's part of the authenticity. And then the reason why the crazy Battlefield moments that, spread on social media and stuff, the reason why those are cool is because they happen within that authentic feeling combined arms sandbox.
Yeah.
Of course, the marketing team can then overlatch onto that, and then we have bizarre things like the public positioning and the communications that have happened with Battlefield.
Yeah.
Now, 2042, in terms of its marketing and public positioning, was all about a return to Battlefield 4. Battlefield 4 was really carrying on Battlefield 3, bringing some of its features forward, adding in Levolution, which was just shit could happen in the map that would change the map. It had a bunch. It had loads of DLC. It actually had a very active and healthy player base. And of course, it had features that future Battlefield games would not have. So a lot of people saw that 2042 was going in the direction of 4. People liked 4. Therefore, 2042 should be exactly what we want. Well, there have been issues. And it's the sort of thing that conjures up all of those things that we've seen with Electronic Arts. Yeah. So today there's a discussion about whether the game deserves to be, basically cyberpunked for a bit.
Yeah, when people are posing that question, I think it's bad when they're like, this product shouldn't exist.
It's kind of wild. So the community is getting more and more frustrated by EA and DICE. A bit of a refusal to reveal a roadmap. Of course, there have been times where they've revealed a roadmap before, but then haven't been able to follow through, like with Battlefield 5. They have this inability, it seems to people, to solve problems. Now, there has been unreasonableness happening as well, such as the expectation, the demands of updates and content. When the team that shipped the game is on holiday, it's like, okay, but let's not bark up the wrong tree. Let's try to use our effort productively, I'd certainly say. But this is not happening in a bubble.
No, this is the continuation of a long trend that's almost coming to a head very recently.
Yeah.
As we talked about with, I think we've talked about Titanfall and Battlefront before, but for a quick recap, go on ahead.
Yeah, so Titanfall infested with game-ending hackers and DDoSes since the return to Steam.
Yep.
EA weren't able to dedicate resources, so yoink, pulled from stores, existing customers be damned. Now, Titanfall 2, which is certainly the more played game there, and that has not been pulled from sale. Obviously, it's got its exceptional single-player campaign. So people have went out of their way to revive Titanfall 2 via private servers. They're putting in features. The community's doing incredible stuff with Titanfall 2. With North Star, which is a reverse engineering and mod project that has turned it into a healthy, thriving game. Now,
better than before?
It's not just like you grab North Star on Steam. So it's always going to be limited and niche because it's being supported in that manner, but it does mean that most dedicated community is happy. And that's important because, you know what? It's such a high skill cap game. It would be a terrible shame if people invested so much time into being good at that game, like the professional Lawbreakers players, only for the game to then fall over. Battlefront 2. This is the funny thing. So, Laura Mealy, who's the Chief Studios Officer,
that's her name.
She basically came in, saw, this could be taken care of a lot better. So she kind of made up this task force. They came in. They basically fixed up Battlefront 2. Everyone's really happy. And they just sort of stopped. It's like, you could have monetized the thing you fixed there, lads. And that's maybe what tells us it's not about, they want to make money from Battlefront 2.
Of course.
The problem, evidently, is they don't have the resources to make money from Battlefront 2 and also make the new Battlefield game. Or support the Battlefield game.
That's the thing that I think was interesting because the task force was definitely, it wasn't like, the task force is a bunch of spare devs going around. It was resources that I believe Laura pulled from existing teams, went, no, we're getting a group of the people we need to solve this problem and we'll go solve the problem. But then the problem's been solved, so that task force ultimately dissolves. But that's not how games work anymore. That needed to be supported. It needs to have some resources. It doesn't need to have a ton of resources, but it needs some to keep it updated, keep it, obviously keep it secure. Because I think someone at EA should really be raising a very big red flag about their security if most of their old games are under these problems. But yeah, it's their resources there, gone.
Yeah, I mean, now, this whole thing of like a 1 HP cheat that's either invincibility or nobody in the game can die, that's just awful. Now, a community manager has responded to this. It was over a month ago, basically just saying that, fix on the radar, but
sorry,
ain't fixed yet.
Yeah, we've got one community manager and no developers, so we'll see what happens.
Enter Kyber. So Kyber is basically the fans coming in with a custom server solution. It's called Kyber. It fixes loads of problems, and it even adds mod support. Once again, the community have came in, just... that they're aiding a big multi-billion-dollar corporation, and that's the crazy thing. And they're going to know they're doing this. They just want to enjoy the game, and they're really smart, so they make these things. But is it not just a crazy situation that EA, with all the money they make, all the money they make off FIFA Ultimate Team, the friggin' cash printer, that now we've got basically 3 dead games, 2 of which are being kept alive by fans?
Yeah, that's the thing that I think is really interesting. They're kept alive by fans, which means there's hunger for those games.
Yeah.
So the fact that you see that should mean that you as a company should go, oh shit, maybe we should be supporting this. Oh, hang on. Is there a way we can, talk to the North Star people, see if we can get some stuff integrated into the real game so console players can avail of this? Or, figure out something like that, an official solution. Same for Kyber. Obviously, they've solved the 1 HP problem, but the developers haven't. So you go, okay, well, EA, get a couple people, even just hand the Kyber team money, go, fix this for us. But they don't. And I have talk about it a little bit later, but I definitely have a theory as to why.
Battlefield 1 and 5 then. So, This same incredible strategy is being applied to Battlefield 1 and 5, which are both being plagued by their own suite of problems that players are facing by themselves. Of course, in the context of these two games both outperforming Battlefield 2042 and Steam.
Yeah, and substantially now.
That could be different on the consoles.
Yeah, or on Origin.
Who knows, right? Or obviously, just on Origin outside of Steam. Yep. But I mean, Steam number is obviously an indicator of something.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, I mean, even if the Steam numbers themselves aren't an indicator, I think the percentage gain or loss is there.
Yeah.
Because, there's the 30-day loss for 2042, and I grabbed these stats today. So that's, 57% of players for 2042 just not playing it. Obviously, 30 days, it's the game's 2 months old. So that's not even like launch day numbers dragged down. That's, you've lost over half your player base in 30 days.
Here's the thing. If you've played Battlefield 5 or 1 in the past, and you jump back into them now, especially, I think Battlefield 1 Revolution contains DLC, but if you just got the Battlefield 1 complete, there'd be a load of guns, a load of maps, which, not single player. Guns and maps are what Battlefield people care about, and game modes, because it's about the big sandbox. There's going to be so much to play. I mean, some of the maps for Battlefield 1 are so cool. They're so cool. So that basically is this weird situation where 2042 has got mild feature regression from some of the things. I mean, it does have bells and whistles that those games don't have, but there is some feature regression, and those games have more content. So to somebody who's revisiting one of those after a few years, it's probably going to be a better experience in 2042.
And I'd love to know, is that something that, is that like a question that anyone at high up in EA or high up at DICE has posed to the team, is how do we solve this? Or how do we think about this? Which is, here's the question. Why would people play our new game instead of our old one? Be honest with us. Or why are more people playing the old one than the new one?
Or weird situations like, why do we continually launch, this is something that had happened in the past, but they would continually launch Battlefield games without the custom server stuff. And then they would say, well, our process for this game to put in this feature is, we're working, it would take ages. Yeah. It's like a Battlefield game without that support. Have you lost your mind? Obviously, Battlefield Portal is a really brilliant thing.
Yep. Except for when it goes a wee bit wrong, but
except for it goes a bit wrong, but it is a great thing. So that side is good with the latest Battlefield, but just that general feeling of the feature regression, and hell, even for Battlefield 2042, one of the large problems there is if you want to get XP and play the mainline mode, there's no server browser. The only thing with the server browser is Portal. Now, the way that it works, I believe, is that it does not have fixed lobbies where the lobby goes through a map rotation. So if you just get a map you don't like twice in a row, and it's a Battlefield game, so they can be long enough games, well, there's a chunk of your evening a bit dead. Yeah. Not going to be happy with that. And to dig into 2042, had weird things like not seeing player KDA on the scoreboard. I was like, come on, it's a Battlefield game. We want to know that. And that's been a little bit of a meme. The good news here is that the Battlefield Direct communication account has laid out that the first phase of the new scoreboard is coming. Better, but it actually won't show other players' deaths for some reason. Now, we do not work in the Battlefield franchise. We do not work in the Frostbite engine. All I can say is that based on my time using Unity, I'm sure for you, based on your time using Unity, and, just being programmers and knowing how, this is fucking easy. What the hell? Basically.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's, so you think about why it doesn't show player deaths. And, why, versus players asking for it because players want to know. That is, to evoke the words of the great J. Allen Brack, you think you do, but you don't. It's that situation where the people who are making these decisions are sitting there going, no, we know better than the players do for what they want to play. And obviously, as professional designers, some of that's true. You can't just go, oh, well, I'll just take player feedback completely blind. But when it comes to overwhelming voices like this, you're like, well, you clearly have some reason internally, either from other, research or previous experiences, that showing deaths has a negative impact on a player. Maybe it adds to toxicity or something when you see someone's died a lot and you're raging. But that's players want that. So what I want is to get the most kills and the least deaths. Yeah.
Anytime it's like a new seasonal COD happens, and for some reason I get dragged into it. Not Vanguard, haven't done that one. What am I doing? I'm a total KDA bastard. I'm 100% that. I am a sweaty, toxic motherfucker. You will hear loud noises come from me as I die, and I go like, ah! Or, other...
Yes.
We can make a whole soundboard of strange noises that me and Matt have made while playing Halo. But that's what FPS players are like.
Yeah.
We're bastards.
Yep. But
And so embrace that, I guess.
yeah, but that's the thing. DICE want to program that out of players. And
Yeah.
is that possibly, that attitude, is that where a lot of this kind of player-developer dissonance is coming from?
Maybe.
I would absolutely posit that as almost certainly in at least some areas.
To me, embracing that's just part of the experience. Now, what's weird here is, so this UI in general, UI has been a shit show for this Battlefield. I don't know how they continually manage to make worse and worse UIs. It's pretty impressive. But from what I understand from Tom Henderson's sort of deep dive in, they did have a lot of staffing issues for this game. And one of the impacts of that is that UI was kind of like rushed and late. So, that's rough.
Yep.
Now then, an EA-sponsored event, Crown Arcade, is going to have to manually count kills and deaths. There's a joke that we make in Final Fantasy XIV because logging, like combat logging is technically against the TOS. So, the joke that we do is, if a player knows their DPS in FF14, it's because they've been sitting there with a notepad and a calculator with every single spell. They're going to have to do that. And again,
literally,
this is an EA-sponsored event, and it's Battlefield. A lot of motherfuckers are going to die in a Battlefield game. A lot of shooty going on. A lot of shoot-bang.
Yep, absolutely.
So that's going to be a really fun thing for somebody to have to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, whenever you lose the narrative as a developer in terms of what you're doing, like, obviously, like, okay, well, we've designed this new UI. We've designed this new scoreboard that's, like, a big improvement, but it doesn't show this. And then a player goes to the subreddit and posts... they literally have a stack of post-it notes, and they've just done, the tally, just like 4, and then a line through it for kills and deaths for player 1, 2, 3. Like, there, I've redesigned your scoreboard and it's better now. You're just losing.
By the way, melee is a bit broken.
Just a bit.
But, don't, whatever. It's a gun game. Who needs melee? Lame. It's not like, getting dog tags has been a thing in Battlefield for ages. No way. No, sir. Content, then. And this is the thing that I've really wanted to hammer in, and this is what, with Battlefield 5, just
killed it.
Boiled my blood a bit, to be honest. And this is what Westy's pointing out here, who's, you've got, like, Westy, Level Cap Gaming, Jack Frags, like, those are your FPS sort of Battlefield boys. At this stage of Battlefield 4's life cycle, the game had already received one DLC, China Rising, which included 4 maps and 2 weapons. The second DLC, Second Assault, was about to launch. Battlefield 2042 has had nothing, and we don't know when the first content drop is happening. This move to live service has murdered content. And, like, okay, so here's the thing. Maybe me as a kid, where, it's like, Microsoft points are a very limited quantity and you can't buy that many DLCs because you're a kid. Maybe you and your friends are trying to, we're going to put his Xbox hard drive in my Xbox and that hard drive has the DLC. Will it work? Who knows? Maybe in that context, I'd be like, so the live service means that all the new maps are free? Great. But to be honest with you, for me... for something that is, is a 500-hour game, I get that there's a problem with splitting the player base. I'd rather have the maps at this stage. I'd rather have the maps because ultimately there's only so many, it's the experience that I value, right? And I want the maps. I don't want to have... Like, if you compare the quantity of maps that came out for the lifetime of BF1 versus BF4, like, I don't want to be strung along doing, grunt work and busy work for company coins and bullshit.
Hey.
I want more maps.
Don't play the game.
I want more game experience. I want, this DLC's really focused on close quarters combat maps. This DLC's got a bunch of, like, naval maps. There's a Battlefield 1 DLC, I think it was set in Russia. You had, like, all of these islands... and you were doing these, like, amphibious assaults to the islands, and then that felt different to the other Battlefield 1 maps that I played, because Like, the fantasy was different. It was using the combined arms warfare in a unique, like, novel way. It was really cool.
Yep.
Or, Battlefield 4, where, its final DLC is basically a halfway house between Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 2142, which was a game that was near and dear to my heart. And I was like, that gave me a unique little experience.
Yeah.
And all this shit of, it's a live service model. This is great. We're not going to split the player base with DLCs. You're going to get maps for free.
Except you're not.
Except, you're not. It probably came at the cost of the stupid specialization system, which is the worst. Damaging to the general fantasy of Battlefield, which, by the way, is as I said at the top of the video, a authentic combined arms sandbox. So, the further you kind of get away from those, like, core military fantasies. Look at what Battlefield 2 was, and that was one of the games that really blew sort of blew it up.
That's one thing I noticed among, a lot, trying to track player sentiment for this. A lot of comparisons I've seen to, like, the Fortnite and Apex models, where they're like, why does this literally look like a gun skin from Apex? What is this focus on skins and customizations? Going to the melee thing back for a second, it was like the big finisher animation seems to be a lot of what's bugging melee out, because you've got these executions and they look stupid and are pointless, and everyone knows, that's just them vying for a way to sell you more animations.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing, and that's why it's bad. And players, especially the clued in players, are onto that. Like, people can smell that now. They go, oh, I see what you're doing. And this is a slight aside, but I've been looking into player motivation for MMO stuff recently, and one of the theories is that it's cognitive evaluation theory, but effectively speaking, there are rewards that can feel controlling and rewards that can feel like rewarding and informational. People pick up on when they're being manipulated and when they're being controlled, and that really reduces their desire to do anything in that context ever again. Yeah. And that's why when you're playing a game and you're going, I guess a bunch of weeklies of a battle pass, that literally tanks your actual fun playing the literal game itself based on behavioral psychology. And they don't care about that because they just want ways to monetize you.
Yeah. Like, how many times have you been playing a game and suddenly you became the self-aware lemming that realized it was in a game of lemmings?
Mm-hmm. That's it.
And I think that happens to so many of us with a lot of these modern games.
Yep.
People I think are a lot smarter than they are given credit for. Maybe you don't even have to be a smart thing. It's like just crafty or clued in, because the game companies have trained us to sniff out their bullshit.
Yeah.
They keep on trying to, change it up or innovate it, but we can still smell it. We know.
Yeah, of course.
And it baffles me. And maybe this is the unique benefit that we have, obviously game studios just over there. Yeah. We also do YouTube. We play a lot of games. How could we not be as sort of player focused as we are given what we do? So maybe that just gives us some different perspective. But there's times I hear anecdotes from friends that are in AAA, and I can't say anything else, but sometimes it's like, oh my God, how could this... Do they play their own game? Do they know how people actually play their game? What the hell? How do they think this? And sometimes that happens to those seniors and those leads who end up just getting so detached.
Yeah, honestly, on that front, it's getting so bad. I was actually recently contacted by someone who almost basically were claiming repentance because they were involved in games publishing for the past while. And they were talking to me about, trying to change what's went wrong internally because they know this is all bad for games and bad for players. And you're like, wow, that's when people inside the machine are going, this is a bad machine. Then you've got a problem. And I think EA is sort of fiddling with everything that DICE are doing on this front. It could be DICE leadership doing it as well. Also, that's a possibility, but it's just that general feel of the move to live service had nothing to do with the player experience or the business model. Realistically, it was all about controlling people for more money.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
Zombie survival. Sound like that risks being cool. So they added a new Portal experience called Zombie Survival. And I'm sure, I don't know if you played COD 2 in a LAN center, but you could go into COD 2, go in a LAN center with your people, and bam, fire up a game of COD 2 Zombies in a modded server. Classic gaming experience. I think there was similar for Counter-Strike and stuff like that as well. It was a really just that golden era, you know? And that we can have that in a Battlefield game, that a Battlefield game can be reminding me of Halo Zombies. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Of course, this was then immediately used for XP farming, so they removed it and replaced it with an old one, so event gone. Again, how do they put that into the game? They're already aware that Portal XP farming is a thing, so how do they put that into the game and not know that this is going to happen? I mean, surely you can throttle this. Surely you can work something out. You know, maybe... I see it's quite tricky because if you capped the amount of Portal experience people could get per day, that would be really interesting. A game designer could do that and think, well, this will limit the damage and still let people do a little bit of that. And then to every single player, they've said, you've just given me an MMORPG daily quest. Why have you done this? I hate you now.
Yeah, because, like, I mean...
Psychology.
Yeah, to follow the behavioral psychology of that, okay, well, if I'm doing this and I'm getting... This is a thing called... the over-justification effect, but also there's like the self-perception theory part of it. But when you play something and you get a reward for it, you generally internally come to believe that, this is a little bit debated, so it's not pure gospel, but you generally come to believe that you did it for that reason in the first place. So if you play a game for fun, but you get a reward, then you go, oh, well, maybe I was doing it for the reward. So if you go do Portal and you're not playing it for fun, but there's a little part of you going, well, I'm getting XP, so it's a good use of my time, might as well. And then that XP stops. That is you then going, well, I have no reason to play this anymore.
Yeah.
Why should I play this? I'm not getting XP. Or like, for fun? But you forget that.
Yeah, and the whole wrapping up in a live service model that makes people really want to have the XP is exactly what's going to cause this.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Even though the zombie survival mode seemed fairly fun, I think more people focused on the XP farming part of it, and it seemed a bit busted because it was just kind of thrown together in Portal. But, you know, what's the problem with it being used for XP farming? Does XP negatively impact the balance of Battlefield 2042? Are you going to go into zombie survival, spend 6 hours farming XP, then go and one-shot people in, BF24 in the main game mode from across the map? No, because there's no player power or balance concerns. But the balance concern is in their system.
Yeah. The only thing, I guess, is the people who just want to go play... Well, I was going to say play Rush.
That's back.
Yeah, it was back. Yeah. But the people who want to just go and play the main modes, they'll then feel stupid for playing the main mode when the XP farm is over there.
Yeah.
I think it's probably better to give people the choice, but messy situation... Could they not have tuned that to have worked? And again, how do they not see these problems coming? That's the thing that always is surprising. Now, as of the time of this video, 81k negative reviews on Steam. Yum, yum. Now, they've said that they're going to be supporting this game for years to come. Do we have firm evidence of that? It's kind of weird because, if a roadmap comes out, well, we all know who loves to clown on roadmaps on their YouTube channel. So they could get roasted for that. Or maybe they have their roadmap, they intend to fulfill it, and it ends up being like one of the, I think it was an African map in Battlefield 5, where map was busted. They had to release it in a small game mode first, and then it was like delayed a bit. And they're like, what? How does this happen?
Yeah, I mean, what is the old saying? The road to hell is paved with good intentions?
Yeah. So all of this frustration is happening. DICE are actually communicating quite a bit, though. They're being more consistent than normal.
They are trying it.
I think it is a thing of development resources and mismanagement, and I think Battlefield 2042 is a more deeply scuffed project than people imagined. Again, I'd recommend Tom Henderson's video on this. So one of the things, obviously, is the game came out, people went away for Christmas. And I know there was some guy, I think he worked PR or something, and he did a bunch of tweets. They were like, hey, come on, guys, our team's got to have a holiday. And he then deleted those tweets and apologized. To be honest, and I know this might get a bit of flack, he shouldn't. I really don't think that was needed. I think his tweets were entirely accurate. I think people who are getting mega angry, say, well, it sucks that I can't enjoy the game I love, or the franchise that I have loved in the past over Christmas. That's a pretty valid thing to be pissed off
100%,
about.
Yeah.
But the whole, why aren't you cracking the whip in your developers during Christmas? Is a completely fucking stupid thing to think. Because even if you did that and you got something out a little bit quicker, you've now burnt out your team. which is going to mean less long-term performance. And it seems to me that consistently burnt out teams with high turnover are what leads to all of this bullshit happening in the first place.
I would say I think that's a hypothesis because there's no scientific proof, but it's the same sort of thing as saying, well, there's no scientific proof that gravity really existed before obviously it was found. You're like, well, stuff falls down. Obviously stuff falls down. We just didn't have the proof yet.
Yeah, so there's something going on. It's clearly not solved because another Battlefield has been a mess. I mean, Battlefield 4 was a mess at launch. I think Battlefield 1 was pretty damn clear, actually. But, weird. Why does this keep on happening? Of course, Battlefield 4 is a big mess at launch, but as Wesley pointed out, they're like, hey, frame rate's not great. Few bugs. What's that? There's a map. There's a map. There's a map. And there's another set of maps after that with new guns. All right, let's go.
Yep.
That's going to give you some confidence as a player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll hang around.
So, look, what they want is this whole live service thing. And we just like this. So somebody asked, why are unlocking new skins being pushed as the only way to have fun in this game rather than just, playing the game itself for fun? And I think that is touching on exactly what you brought up.
Yep. No,
and that's something we feel as players.
Yeah, no, this response completely sold it to me, where it's like, this was, I guess, about them forcing players to play the game instead of having fun in the game, because it's very hard to design a game that people have fun in. You don't really have a metric for fun outside of people are having fun, I guess, from looking at them. Your metric for players having fun is lots of players playing the game, realistically. So, like, this was, obviously the person clearly isn't, the first language isn't English, but they said, because the game itself is boring, there's no variability and variety. In the foregoing parts, the process itself was pleasurable, which, sort of, if you apply some translation, that means in the earlier games, the game was fun to play. I don't know how the developers achieved this in the previous parts, so they haven't done it in new games. For instance, when you're in a tank, you must feel security, power, sometimes impunity. In 2042, the tank is plastic. And that's where it comes to the authenticity, where, especially for in maybe obviously not in modern stuff where you've got more powerful weapons, but especially in kind of older settings, a tank was a thing to be reckoned with. Yeah. Sure, it had vulnerabilities, but you just rode in and bolts are bouncing off, you're doing whatever you wanted to, and that was a point of power. But obviously then they go on to say, atmosphere, details, globality, hopelessness, sense of risk, where's it all?
So whenever I heard 2042, I was immediately a bit worried. Now, I liked how they showed off bullshit in their trailer, like the fun bullshit. Yeah. But I was a bit worried. This is a problem. Futuristic settings give game designers too much freedom. Now, obviously, you can then say, well, Michael, you really like 2142. Yeah. The reason I like 2142 is because it had a pretty clear limited fantasy with the Titans feature that its version of the Conquest game mode was built around. So that's why it was good. It had those constraints with overall game mode. But that's the thing. Whenever you're in a more modern setting, it's like, right, or modern as in today.
Yeah.
Not even today. Let's just say 20 years ago, because that's maybe going to feel more like Battlefield 2. Yeah. Because I think military technology is probably a bit wild now.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably goes beyond the player fantasy that somebody playing a shooter would actually even want.
Yeah.
But the more that you can have super tactical bells and whistles, it's like, what can that do? Well, that can, if you look at Rainbow Six Siege, that is enjoyed, I think, by competitive FPS players.
Yeah.
I think as time has went on, that is a game that's, it has been less interesting to me because more of the inauthentic to the sort of maybe SWAT 5 or whatever fantasy, those things have crept in. Now, I don't begrudge the game that because it's a marvelous game and people love it. It just means it's not as much for me. I have a feeling with some Battlefield people, we're just experiencing that thing where, if the tanks are all weird and different and the game design is kind of weird and wacky, and you have way too many tools. Just sometimes for me, it's like how sci-fi can be really well used by the likes of, say, The Expanse, when science fiction is used for a setting and then also a set of constraints.
Yeah.
But then you get times where sci-fi is just used for, we're going to fire up Adobe After Effects and I guess we'll have a movie. That's how it feels.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that can happen. I think you can lose a degree of clarity in your game design when you're able to have that extreme freedom. I think it makes it basically, it gives you more to do, but But because constraints are super helpful when designing a game, I think it actually makes it far harder to design a game that is fun.
Yeah.
So there could even be a situation where maybe some of the devs will feel that they've lost the secret sauce, and really the devs don't know how they've lost the secret sauce, and the players probably also don't know how they lost the secret sauce. But that is just a theory.
Yeah, I think that's the thing where I think it boils down to, I think there's so much effort going into designing monetization and live service elements and the player reward structure. There's not enough time going into designing the player fun stuff.
Yeah.
Which obviously, you know, there are teams of very talented game designers all over the place doing great work, and I can't imagine the people who are sitting thinking, trying how to balance, you know, different vehicles and different weapons. I can't imagine they're sitting going, haha, what if we get engagement out of this feature? They're probably just trying to make the cool thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's not enough of them, or they're not given precedence over the people who are designing the monetization stuff, then how are you going to have a game that's fun? And I think going back to what you were talking about at the start about Battlefield 5 is really interesting to me, because you're saying that like gunplay was good. It just wasn't supported.
Yeah.
So why did they make 2042 when if they just supported Battlefield 5, then they'd have had a fun game, and then they could have put content in it, and then people would have kept playing it, and they would have achieved their goals. And I think this is where we get to talk about just what EA are actually doing.
Yeah.
And why they don't seem happy with make a good game, continue good game, keep it lit like that.
Yeah, so it's been a mess. I guess what's up. So box sales are super important, evidently, to all of this. And part of that is they do want to get more Origin Premium people.
Yeah.
Which is another side to things.
For
and
sure.
Relying heavily on box sales makes the Origin Premium, or whatever they call it now, it makes it a better value prop to people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because it feels like, oh, okay, so for, X a month, I get that. And look, ooh, that's got a high value. So, there's that. I think the issue is, it's just the whole, GG, go next. Yeah. It's like the lessons don't seem to be, I don't think the lessons are that well institutionally learned. I'm sure that there are loads of developers who actually have learned lessons, but one of the things that I learned from Tom Henderson's coverage of this game, and he would have been, he's one of the sort of FPS, like Battlefield leakers, a bit more in the know.
Yeah, he knows people big time.
Yeah, and that basically is that a lot of senior people left. So I think what happens is the senior people who have got that great knowledge, they leave. The institutional knowledge sort of goes down. The new people come in, and, no fault to them. They don't have those great mentors in the company to help them, to pass on those lessons as good. And then those new people are just shunted in probably to some sort of pretty compressed development time frame where it's like, oh, all of these great philosophical discussions, they're very cool to have, but actually we need to build a game now, so here's your Jira tasks, away you go. And that's just what it is going to end up having to be, so that the publisher has their game. And I think that just means that the amount of stuff that slips through the cracks just must be wild.
Yep, for sure.
So, case in point, like Star Wars, and then Respawn as the new golden child. There's 3 Respawn Star Wars games. There's Jedi Fallen Order 2, or Jedi 2. There's an FPS, which is unrelated to their other in-development FPS that is based on style and mobility, which, by the way, given that they did Titanfall 2, I'm very excited. And then BitReactor, of course, are doing a strategy game as well. And you can check out our video on that just a few days ago. And it's just quite wild to me, because imagine if while this was going on, Battlefront 2 was getting ongoing support as a live game with, new features, new maps, or, whatever way they choose to monetize it. It's like they saved the game. So you could maybe do a Battlefront 3 and remake the same thing and then ship a basic version up with less features. Or you could take the thing that people actually like and
continue developing it.
Yeah. And I suppose because you and I come from an MMORPG space, or, we'll just use the MMOs. We're kind of used to the idea of the overall game that I'm playing is the same game. It just keeps on getting updates.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, except you don't get box sales.
Yeah, but if they're trying to push a live service anyway, is it that it? Is that it, that they want to have the cake and eat it too, which means that they can't do it right?
This is exactly my theory, because the one live service out of EA that seems to be successful Excluding all of their live servicified sports games, because I think they could, they have to do the bare minimum there, I think, realistically speaking. But Apex was live service correctly with content updates, but fundamentally it was built on a really solid, this game just owns the play. And that's what attracted people to it. Launched out of nowhere, played really well from Respawn, because Titanfall 2 plays really well, and Titanfall before it played well as well. You're like, yeah, there you go. You've got a really explosive launch and good development, so you can keep that going. But EA seem to me to keep scrapping and scrapping and scrapping because they want that explosive launch that they can follow through. But they're not willing to give games the time and the resources to get the actual explosive launch. Surely they tried with 2042 because they gave that break in the release schedule, but they clearly didn't give it enough time or enough resources to come out and be that this game is really good, we can keep this alive. They're just going, fuck it, try again. Fuck it, try again.
It's just such utterly smooth brain strategic thinking. Like, so here's the thing. In investing, what's important? Well, there's obviously going to be your rate of return on a yearly basis and the size of your principal, then any contributions that you can make. Now, obviously, the larger your principal, the better, because it means the baseline to which the compound interest is applying. I mean, not that it works that way. It's obviously the performance of but the baseline is higher. How does that apply to games? It actually applies directly, I think. So the way I put it is, your principal is basically how many players do you capture and essentially retain at launch? And sure, it's not compound interest as if, every player then turns into a few more, but actually it is.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Because these games spread by word of mouth, the form of marketing that you don't have to pay for with a marketing department. It's the form of marketing you get for free when you have a good game. What they keep on doing is they cock up their launch, so they mess up their principal, and then they mess up their follow-through, which then depresses the word of mouth.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you want one of these games to do well, you have to have an incredible launch, and you have to follow through. If you cannot do either of those things, you must delay your game, because the quarterly sales are really not going to matter when, compared to the long-term view of these things actually done right and the financial success that would bring. And it just completely blows my mind that they release these things that they know are not going to work out well because they have to. And it's just that thing. Where's the accountability?
It very clearly doesn't exist. That's the thing I think that's the thing across everything here with these big, I guess it's because they're incumbent companies and they have so many backups and so many golden parachutes, there's no accountability whatsoever. So whoever's pushing DICE to do the release on time, they're just like, oh, well, it was DICE's fault. They didn't make the game on time, like I told them. I think that's where it's...
Was me. Didn't do none.
It was me. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no, you can't fire me. I'm an executive. You can fire the entire DICE dev team because they don't have tenure or seniority.
And the thing is, okay, so imagine this as contractors working in your house. Yeah. Fair play. It wasn't your fault. But now your house is a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Maybe you should have paid him more. Maybe you should have given him more time. Maybe you should have got somebody else to do it. Yeah. Ultimately, it's your fault. And it's confusing. So overall, I think the hope here would be that Respawn would show the rest of them how to actually do this. And that could happen because Vince Zampella is now directly involved in charting the overall course of the Battlefield franchise.
Yeah.
Could be that some change will happen there. And I'd totally be down for that. I want Battlefield to be a vibrant, successful franchise where these games do really well, that they can have different games or different entries and different timelines or, time frames even that fulfill different player fantasies. Like, look, if you want to do the crazy action madness Battlefield, I'm happy with that. Yeah. Support the one that keeps the other players happy. And I think for that, they just, they obviously just need to hire up. And evidently, one of the things that's going on, and I think this is a large thing in all these companies, is struggling to retain staff. Maybe there's just not enough developers coming out of, humanity per year for us to have all the AAA games be good. I don't know.
Yeah, there's not enough developers coming out of humanity every year. At the same time, there are also that many developers leaving the industry because they've been treated like they're disposable. And if they're treated that way, they will be, and they will leave. And they'll have better lives outside of development.
Yeah.
And this is where this comes from again. Oh, man.
Yeah, that's the thing, because making games is really hard.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of other types of software that have obviously got hard problems. But I mean, with video games, it's like all of that's happening in this crazy live environment, maybe with this crazy server infrastructure. It's like it's so hard to make games.
Yeah.
So people can make a lot more money elsewhere, and they do. And then this brain drain happens. And along with that brain drain comes the person who learned the lesson from the last game that came out. And then you have these games, these big budget follow-ups that somehow represent knowledge being lost instead of knowledge being acted on. And it's mad. It's mad.
Yeah. I mean, before we finish up, to go back to what OK Watercress 6900 was saying, you know, in the foregoing parts, the process itself was pleasurable. I don't know how the developers achieved this in the previous parts, because they're not the same developers, likely.
No, definitely not.
At least not majorly. There'll be some big names, likely same leadership, but not the same developers.
Yeah. So it's a weird situation overall. I hope that this game can get back on track. I want Battlefield to do well.
Yep.
I want to happily give my money to EA in return for an enjoyable game. That's what the relationship kind of should be in gaming, actually. But, you know, if EA's not going to meet us there, then it's not going to happen.
Yep. There are competitors.
Yeah. So there you go, everyone. Let me know what your experience has been, how things are going. And I think with that, we'll take off. There'll be a video up tomorrow. There was a video up yesterday. This channel is pumped with content, so enjoy. And